Hello, Sabia. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
sir. Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so welcome everyone. We are having this live for to celebrate the World Migratory Bird Day, which was yesterday, and we have with us Sabia Sheikh, who is also the co-founder of Indian Seabird Group. So Sabia is currently doing her PhD in University of Exeter. She is studying the interaction between seabirds and their prey species to maximize conservation gains. She has also been an active part of Indian Seabird Group over the past few years. So Sabia, let's dive into this. So how did this all start? Like, how did you get interested in seabirds?
So when I initially started out in my career, I actually hadn't been exposed to seabirds too much. I grew up in central India, very landlocked. So there weren't many opportunities to see seabirds or even think about them at all. Um, and I think the first time when I became interested in seabirds was just after finishing my undergraduate degree. I just wanted to get some experience with animal handling and animal care. And, maybe that time I was thinking maybe I want a career in animal rehabilitation, perhaps. And through my university, I sort of got this internship at a seabird rehabilitation hospital. And even till I got there, I don't think I had too much knowledge of seabirds, or like it hadn't hit me yet how cool these birds were. So when I started working with them, I was handling all these birds every day, and it was penguins, so it was pretty cool. Not gonna lie. But I think like as I kept working there, and we had to keep learning about the threats they were facing and why they were ending up in a seabird rehabilitation hospital. It was because they were stranding, exhausted, or they had gotten lost, or like been drawn in by urban lights or something like that. And as I kept learning more about them, I think I just kept becoming more and more interested in seabirds. But it wasn't till I saw these two species at the center that I was actually really fascinated by seabirds. So one of the days I came into work, and a southern giant petrel had washed up,
Oh.
and this was in South Africa, so still quite far from where they breed. I think the closest subantarctic island. So there are these giant petrels. There are these huge
Mhm.
birds that breed in the subantarctic islands, but they're very wide ranging, and they go quite far out to get their food. And when they're not breeding on land, they're just out in the ocean foraging and living life.
Mhm.
But when I came into work, this like giant bird had been checked in, and it's still like I was like, okay, cool, like this is a cool looking giant bird, but everybody was so excited about this bird. And so I just like immediately went home and Googled everything I could about this bird. And it just blew my mind. Like I was in awe of how cool these birds are and how far they travel, and like how far this bird had ended up from where it was breeding, and like how they only come to land to breed. It's just so cool. Like you think about birds, I think, and as a person who grew up in a landlocked place, you think about birds just being on like trees, and like you
Mhm.
think about them migrating a little bit, but like to go out into the ocean, dive and feed on marine prey species, that's so cool. And that
Yeah.
I really sort of like got into it, and I was like, yeah, okay, this is something I think I want to work on.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. So, what kind of skills did you focus on developing to get into seabird science?
So I think just before I had been working on some animal handling skills at the Seabird Rehabilitation Hospital. I have some slides,
Yeah,
which
sure.
I
I'll
think I
just
can.
add it to stage. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
So these are some photos from when I was doing the seabird rehabilitation work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so some of the skills that I focused on developing were animal handling and animal care, because I knew I wanted to go into seabird research, but also seabird research that involved field work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and movement ecology is something I was very interested in. So like finding out where they go to feed and forage, and like where they spend time when they're not breeding on land. So I knew that I wanted to work on seabirds, and I wanted that work to be quite hands on. So animal
Mm-hmm.
handling skills were like one of the key things that I really focused on developing. obviously at that rehabilitation center. But then also, like, I was involved in a bit of colony monitoring, so just counting the number of breeding seabirds during breeding season, during this internship only, and that was like a really good skill.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, can I move on? So I missed these slides in the beginning, but this is the southern giant petrel that I was talking about.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see my pointer. No, probably not.
No, I can't see it.
Okay, so the bird on the right, the photo with the two birds, the bird
Mm-hmm.
on the left is the southern giant petrel.
Oh, okay.
And then another cool species that I saw at the center was also an albatross, which, like, I mean, living in India, I feel like I would have never seen an albatross, and it's
Yeah.
cool to see it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So another skill was bird ringing, because if you're involved in bird work, you will be ringing birds. It's like you want to mark the birds to know if they're still alive later on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really important skill, I think. And getting ringing experience with seabirds is quite challenging. Even so, I'm currently doing my PhD in the UK, where bird ringing is quite big. But getting opportunities to ring seabirds is quite rare still, and like I am struggling at the moment to get like my numbers up and to get the experience that I need. But during my masters, like when I had the choice to select one of my practicals, I chose bird ringing. And even
Mm-hmm.
if you're ringing other birds, not just seabirds, I think the experience can be quite helpful, because some of the catching techniques can be quite similar for seabird species and some of the small passerines that we ring. For example, mist netting. So during my masters, I mostly did mist netting, where you basically put out these nets and you play calls of the birds that are in the area to sort of attract them to the net, and then they just fly into the net. And then you learn important skills like, removing the bird from the net safely, and then handling it, putting a ring on it, and then taking important measurements that can help you either differentiate the sex of the bird, or know the age of the bird. So like measuring their wing length, and like taking their weight and everything. So these are quite important skills that I think I learned through bird ringing. And I feel like there are some opportunities now in India also available to go bird ringing with the BNHS. I see them
Mm-hmm.
advertising courses.
Yeah.
Um, but I think this was like one of the key practical or fieldwork skill that I wanted to develop, and that I tried to work on as much as I could. But obviously, it was
Mm-hmm.
limited by COVID and
Yeah.
limited opportunities in India.
Yeah, definitely. So, talking about that, like, was it like hard to find opportunities in seabird research, like in India or in general? And what kind of resources can somebody look into if they are interested for something like that?
So I think it was quite challenging to find any opportunities in India, to be honest. So when I
Mm-hmm.
was looking, I was also doing an internship side by side to develop other skills. But I kept looking on Twitter, but I also tried to identify people who are currently or have been working on seabirds in India. So I just like, went through pages, like staff pages of different organizations, and did some keyword searches on Google to see who was working on seabird research in India. And that's sort of where I realized that, like, there was a huge gap between people working in seabird science in India and people who want to work
Yeah.
in seabird science in
Mm-hmm.
India. But that's how I met one of my colleagues, Anant, over email. I just emailed him to ask for his advice because he did his PhD on seabirds in India, and like we recognized this gap, and we tried to make the Indian Seabird Group, who's hosting this webinar today, to sort of bridge that gap. So hopefully Indian Seabird Group will be a platform for looking for seabird opportunities in the future. But I did find a couple of remote opportunities. I mean, in a way, I got lucky during COVID because some opportunities that were being advertised had become remote. And like,
Okay.
if they hadn't become remote, I would have never gotten the chance to actually do those, do those projects. Um, so one of the things that I did was I volunteer, and I use Twitter to like look for all of these opportunities. Twitter is like a great resource, or it's called X now.
Yeah.
But like that's where I found my PhD. It was advertised on Twitter, and like I found so many voluntary roles, but also paid roles on Twitter that have been advertised. So like one of the cool projects that I got involved in a voluntary capacity with was um, Paparazzi. It's this
Mm-hmm.
project in the UK by the RSPB, the Royal Society for Protection of Birds. And in that, they basically want citizen scientists to get involved by submitting photos of
Mm-hmm.
puffins, these tiny seabirds, carrying fish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they sort of took on some volunteers to help identify, count, and measure the fish that puffins were carrying back to their nests. And this, they were doing this to sort of look at changes in the diet of seabirds or in the diet of puffins over multiple years. So they have photos from, I want to say 1992 was their oldest photo, maybe.
Oh,
But I
okay.
can't remember for sure. But and then we had photos up until I think 2022 is when I was doing the project. And using that data, they were trying to look at changes in the diet. I have a quick slide.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what a puffin is, if you
No.
didn't
Mm-hmm.
know. And this is a puffin carrying fish back to its nest. So they carry whole fish rather than, half digested fish for their chicks. So they'll
Okay.
just feed their chicks these whole fish. So it gives like a great opportunity for people to just take photographs and know what they're feeding their chicks.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, how many fish can they carry? I mean, I see a lot of them in the beak of this bird, at least. Uh,
I think the maximum that I counted was maybe like 15, but I'm sure that the number is way higher than that.
wow.
Just behind their beak, they have this little like flexible part that they can like
Mhm.
stuff the fish into.
Okay.
Yeah, they can carry quite a lot of fish. So this is like a very successful foraging trip.
Wonderful. Yeah, that sounds cool. And could you tell me more about your current research? Like, is this something you do right now, or how? What does your typical day look like?
So puffins are hopefully going to be a part of my research from next year onwards,
Hmm.
Q1 this year. So basically, most of my research right now is focused on, like you said, mapping seabird foraging grounds,
Hmm.
so where they're going to eat, what they're eating, and how much of what they're eating is available in that region right now. So my work is focused in the southwest of the UK,
Okay.
on this tiny archipelago called the Isles of Scilly.
Hmm.
It's on the southwest coast off of the southwest coast of the UK. And even though in UK, like seabirds have been the subject of many long-term monitoring studies, the southwest hasn't been studied that much. So not too much information is available about what they're eating, where they're eating, and how much food is available. But they have been experiencing or a lot of species breeding on those islands have been experiencing significant population declines.
Okay.
So, my PhD is trying to focus on understanding whether the population declines may be linked to changes in food availability. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because elsewhere in the UK and in loads of places in the world, um, reducing or changes in food availability that are linked to either overfishing or climate change have been linked to population declines in seabirds. So we just don't have that information about the southwest of the UK. So I have a slide on this. So I'm focusing on three species, but I wasn't able to work on puffins this year. But I'm focusing on European shags and lesser black-backed gulls.
Okay.
And these species have experienced quite a significant population decline in the last decade
Mm-hmm.
in this region. So how I'm trying to study what I'm trying to study is by GPS tagging breeding individuals.
Okay.
um, so on the right, you can see a photo of a shag with one of the GPS tags that we deployed this year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm also collecting any pellet samples. Basically, pellets are it's like this little blob of fish remains that are undigested that they just like vomit out.
Oh. Yeah.
So you can find these in the colony. So when we're going to capture the birds or mark nests, we can usually
Mm-hmm.
see them on the floor or like on the ground. So we just pick them up and put them in a little bag and bring them back.
Okay.
And then I've also collected some fecal samples. So whenever again we go to tag birds, they will poo on us. So we'll just collect those samples and put them in a vial.
Mm.
And what happens with these pellet samples is we take them back to the lab, we rinse them out, and we look at all the little bones and stuff that might remain from the fish. And then
Mm-hmm.
we identify what fish or what family of fish they've been eating based on those little bones. We examine them under a microscope,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll just, try to identify them to like even the species level, but sometimes it's only possible to do it to the family level. Um, and then with the poop samples, we will send them off to a lab, and DNA of prey fish will be extracted from that.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So, for like, for example, in the pellets, we can only see the remains of the bigger fish or the fish that we're able to easily identify using bones. But
Mm-hmm.
some for smaller fish, the bones might be broken or like they won't be that visible. So using the fecal samples is a much better or is a much more accurate method than using the pellets, but using a combination of them is even better.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then, so this is the seabird part of my study.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have a fish availability part of my study. So we want to see how much of the prey fish that they're eating is available within the region. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so how we do this is we use a combination of three methods to survey fish the area. So one of them is hydroacoustic surveys. So we go out on a boat and do hydroacoustic surveys on these transects, and it's basically like sending a ping down that'll reflect off of or give some backscatter off of swim bladders of fish,
Mm-hmm.
and that will sort of tell us where the fish are in like the vertical
The water.
column.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the vertical water column, but also it'll help us estimate the biomass of fish.
Oh.
But it's much harder to know exactly which fish species there
Mm-hmm.
is from that. And then another method is we use these baited remote underwater camera systems.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we have two GoPros attached to this. So this method is called browse, and so we have
Mm-hmm.
a frame and two GoPros are attached to it, and there's a pole in front, and we bait that with oily fish,
Okay.
and then we drop it underwater for an hour. And then
Mm-hmm.
whatever comes in front of the camera will, give us a good idea of the diversity of fish that there is.
Yeah.
So with the hydroacoustic, we can't necessarily tell which fish it might be, but using browse as like a complementary method, we can sort of see which fish are there and which habitat they associate with. Um,
Okay.
and the third method is environmental DNA. So,
Mm-hmm.
just like us, like fish also leave some of their DNA behind or shed some of their DNA behind in the environment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, one of my colleagues has been working on this method where you put a um, medical gauze in this sphere,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then you submerge it underwater for a certain amount of time, and it collects all the environmental DNA that's present, and then we come back, or it goes back to the lab, and you can extract that DNA and see what fish were present in that environment. Uh,
Oh.
yeah, so that's how we do the fish availability surveys. I had a video to show you, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to upload it
Oh.
because of the size limit.
Oh, oh, yeah. Maybe we can upload it later on our social media channel or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so this sounds really cool. And apart from this, what is like your coolest or your favorite memory about working on seabirds till now?
So there was this really, really cool thing I did this year. So I've just gotten into seabird ringing, and I'm trying to work towards getting my ringing license. So I try to go out as much as I can. And recently, I went to this European storm petrel ringing session, and you read about them and you know that they're small, but like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really register in your mind. You're like, okay, but like, especially with the seabird, because they travel so far, they
Mm-hmm.
eat, fish, and I mean, they could eat krill and other stuff as well,
Yeah.
smaller stuff. But they just like the ability to travel so far for like a tiny bird is just, it's so hard to imagine. Um,
Yeah.
So we went out ringing, and it was my first time. So storm petrels are nocturnal, and you have to like find a new moon and a very calm day to tag or to ring them.
Mhm.
So you just go out to like, so we were on the islands, and we just went out to like one point of the island that was on a beach, and we put out these mist nets. And then what you do is you play tapes of storm petrel calls so that they
Oh.
get attracted,
Mhm. Okay.
to either like prospect the island, or they just get attracted to the sound. So they'll come towards the island, and then they'll get caught in the net.
Mhm.
They fly into it, and they sort of just get like a little bit tangled in the net, and then you remove them. So I went for the session. I had never seen a storm petrel up close, a European storm petrel up close, and we put out everything, and it was like I think e- 11 or 12, 11 p.m. or 12 a.m. And we got our first one, and somebody
Oh.
untangled it and then brought it up to our ringing station. And just looking at how small it was, it just blew my mind. Like
Yeah.
the range of their weight was
Mhm.
from 28 grams to 38 grams. And this
Oh.
is a bird. Like
Mhm.
it's so tiny you can hold it like this in your hand.
Oh.
Um, like yeah, it just I think it was when I held that bird, I just wanted to go home, and I was like, I need to look up every single thing about this bird. How is it surviving? How is it not getting blown over in the winds all the time?
Yeah. But then
Yeah.
I think they do use the winds. I mean, that is why it's called a storm petrel because it kind of uses the
Yeah.
storm. I think, yeah, that's why it has to be so light so that it's easily carried by the winds like that.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but like so light. And then I was talking
Yeah.
to someone who studies storm petrels,
Mm-hmm.
and we were just chatting about their diet, and they have like bits of shark, bits of
Oh.
things in their diet. Like how I don't know how that tiny beak takes anything. It's just so small. Um, so I think this is like one of the experience that I know I'll always remember. It's just maybe I romanticized it too much, but like it was such a dark night, so calm and quiet, and we were like at the edge of land literally, and like just waiting for these birds, and they just like kept flying in. So I think we caught like 43 birds that night.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. Just like they're so small, and you hold them, and you put like this very small ring on them. That yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's so cool. Um, yeah, so the other thing that I wanted to ask, and a lot of our audience might be interested in, is how can citizen scientists be more involved? So now that we have this Seabird group where we are trying to grow the network, and there are a lot of people who kind of go bird watching and stuff. So if they want to contribute to the Seabird research, or there are students who are still finding out if they're interested and if they would like to work on seabirds in the future. So, how can people be more involved in seabird research in India? So, do you have any pointers for that?
So I think like, now that we formed this Indian Seabird group, we want to really grow, and we want to have research outputs as well. So we're very open to like people reaching out to us with ideas of what they would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the activities that we're already doing are like trying to, make posters to create awareness about seabird standings. And we've also formed a WhatsApp group where, if you are going out birding for seabirds, you can send photos of the birds that you see, and give us the location of the birds. So we're also trying to like create a list of all the birds that are occurring in the Indian subcontinent. So if you go out and see something and you contribute it, and let us know that you've seen it, maybe it'll help us grow our list. But yeah, just like reach out to us if you're a student, if you have any research ideas. We have loads of people who are experts on seabirds within the group, but we can also help you connect with other people who might be working in the Indian subcontinent. So yeah, reach out to us if you want to volunteer with us for like raising awareness, creating outreach material. That would be great. If you work on seabirds and if you want to give a webinar with us, please reach out to us. That
Yeah,
would be amazing.
always work.
Yeah, we're always looking for people to talk about their research. But even if you're a birder who has done like an incredible pelagic trip or anything like that, and you want to share what you've seen, please reach out to us. We would be happy to host you. We're also now looking at starting a blog or like a media page on our website where we would love contributions from everyone. on, again, if you go out on a birding trip, if you go out on a bird ringing trip, you can just write about what you did. And I think that would be really interesting for people to read. But you can just submit a photo as well, like you don't have to write about
Yeah.
it. So you can contribute in any form. And yeah, just like reach out to us, and I think we can work something out for everyone.
Yeah.
Mm, but yeah,
And
we,
yeah, and we are quite active on social media. We are active on Instagram and on X. So people can reach out over there, or you can write to us at Indian Seabird Group at gmail.com. Be a part of the WhatsApp group as well. And so you're more involved in the activities. And yeah, so Sabia, thank you so much for coming today and telling us about the school research that you're doing. And we are hoping to have more webinars soon. So I don't, let me just check if we have any questions from audience. We don't have anything right now, but we can, you can write to us or reach out to Sabia on social media or something, and stay in touch. And we'll see you soon for more such webinars in the coming months. And yeah, thanks for attending. Should I end this? Okay, thanks, Abia. Bye
thank
bye.
you.